Welcome to the Share Hope, Bring Love podcast, where we bring you stories that illuminate the power of God's hope and love, even in the darkest of places. I'm your host, Rochelle Starr.
And I'm Rachel Hunter, your co-host. Together, we'll explore incredible life-changing stories and the impact of gospel outreach, Christian community, and discipleship.
In each episode, we explore narratives that not only uplift, but also offer insights into how hope and love can transform lives. We believe that these stories have the power to touch hearts and inspire action.
So whether you're seeking to be inspired or to learn, this podcast will be a reminder of the light that exists in the world. You're in the right place. We're here to share, uplift, and connect, one story at a time.
Well, welcome to the show, Share Hope, Bring Love. Let's go.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today I'm really excited because Cassidy is with us. Cassidy's been on staff for a while now, so I'll let her introduce herself. So Cassidy, tell us about who you are.
Okay. My name's Cassidy Reese. I am the Director of Scarlet Hope Denver. I have lived in Denver for 3 years, and we started Scarlet Hope about 2.5 years ago in the beginning of 2022. I live there with my husband, Steven, and our 2-year-old son, Lewis. We moved from Nashville, and I think we'll dive a little bit more into that because that's a little bit of part of my Scarlet Hope story. But we love Denver. We love the mountains. We moved there for our church and have just really enjoyed being in that city.
Okay, so you kind of hit on this. You came from Nashville, but also you're from Louisville.
Yes.
I think you have one of the coolest origin stories of any of the directors. So kind of talk us through when you first heard about Scarlet Hope all the way till now.
Yes. So I was born and raised in Louisville from the time I was born until I left for college. And I always knew about Scarlet Hope because our church was a big supporter of Scarlet Hope. And so I'd been hearing about it. But then my mom ended up serving on the cook team where she served for 8 years. And so it was a part of her week. Every Thursday she was here cooking. And so that was something I grew accustomed to and really enjoyed knowing about her. At the time I was young, so I still couldn't, grasp what all it was that Scarlet Hope was doing or even think to myself like, oh, I would love to serve in that capacity. But it was always there on my head. And then when I moved from college to Nashville with my husband, we had been living there for about a year, and my mom called and said, hey, I was at the gala and they're actually starting a site in Nashville. You should reach out. And she and I were both like, oh, I'll reach out. My husband and I do photo and video. And so we were like, well, we'll reach out and say, like, if you ever need help in that capacity, I would love to serve you. And so I reached out to Tammy, the director, and just said that. And then we met in a coffee shop, and she said, I would really love that help. But also in order for me to get started, I need someone to go into the club. And I actually feel like you might be really good at that. And so I left being like, oh, okay, this was not what I expected, but I actually feel like I'm supposed to do this. And so I went home and talked to my husband and just said, I think I'm supposed to go in the clubs here in Nashville. And he was like, great. And I was like, oh, okay, easy.
Here we go. Yeah.
Here we go. And so I started serving in 2019 on the outreach team in Nashville. And then when we felt like the Lord was calling us to Denver in 2022 or 2021. We moved, and I, pushed off a little bit the idea of what Scarlet Hope in Denver would look like. But I also knew that the Lord had given me this passion for these women in Nashville, and I had only been there for 2 years, and I just really started asking, like, I have this passion in me now. Like, what do I do with it? When you see, which I'm sure and people know that serve in this area, when you start to see this world and the brokenness in it and the women in it, it's really hard to stop and to turn away from that. And so moving to Denver, started feeling the Lord say like, this should be in Denver. And I started to say, well, not me, right? Yeah. Like, it's not going to be me.
I'll jump in and help someone.
Yeah. Hopefully there's another organization doing it, or they're going to bring Scarlet Hope eventually and I will serve. But over the time, the Lord just kept pressing and pressing, and I finally reached out to Rochelle and just said, have you ever considered Denver? And we got on the phone within 5 minutes of my text message, and she had said, Cassidy, this is really crazy, but Denver's been in the works for a couple years, and we just need a director. And so it was very clear at that point that there was not much else I could do but say yes. So
yeah. And what year was that? That was 2020?
That was 2021 that we started those conversations.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's been maybe like a highlight since then?
Oh gosh. Oh my goodness. It's so funny because I had that conversation with Rochelle. We were basically in the works of, the interview process and me feeling like this is for sure what's going to happen. And then our first meeting was scheduled the day after I found out I was pregnant.
Cool.
And so I was like, whoa, what's happening? I'm jumping into a new journey, being in this full-time ministry role as a director and what this looks like. And I'm also having a baby. And so honestly, one of the coolest things to look back at is to see the Lord faithfully prepare me and not have to, leave the industry because I had a baby or feel like I'm not equipped to handle both those things. And so just seeing the Lord step in and say I'm capable of doing both these things. I can be a mom and a director of this ministry. And so it's been a really sweet thing to see the combination of our family beginning and then also beginning this ministry in Denver.
Yeah. I think a lot of women maybe who are moms don't feel like they can get involved in ministry. So what does that look like for you? How have you, because you said it's come together so well. So what does that look like?
I think it's so important to have a really stable and uplifting community and family. Steven is my biggest cheerleader, and I'm probably going to cry 50 times when we talk. So
Let's go.
I remember having the first conversation with him and saying, should I do this? Should I bring this to Denver? This feels like a lot. We never expected to be in ministry. We had our own business. And so it was a complete change of career and, what we were doing. And so I said to him, do you think I should do this? And he said, if you don't, no one else will. And so you have to. And so having him affirm and confirm these things that we're bringing to mind and then continuing to do that as I have become a mom is huge. But also just having a really awesome community around us that is ready to step in whenever. I have so many moments where I'm hey, I really need to go meet with this woman. And a friend's totally, I'm over your house in 10 minutes. And so having a good community around you is amazing. And then, you're fully capable of doing both. I know that seasons can be hard and sometimes you do need to take a step back. But you are able to love women and love your family. Something that I think about often is actually how having Lewis is an entrance into women's lives often. So, a lot of the women in the club have kids that are my son's age. And so I actually get to bring Lewis into hangouts with the women. We go to parks and just walk, or we let them play while we talk. And so it's actually been a plus for me in the industry serving these women. So it's been sweet to be able to do both.
We weren't planning to talk about this, but I'm going to go there anyways. So one of the things that Scarlet Hope wants to do better and grow in is really thinking holistically for families. So not just serving a woman, but saying, how can we walk alongside her entire family? And so you and I have actually been talking about that this year. And so do you have a story maybe of a woman, of what that's looked like, of how you've been able to maybe connect better with a woman because of Lewis?
Yes. Yeah. So I met this woman about a year ago, and she actually lived in Salt Lake City, but traveled to Denver to work. She would come every 2 months and stay for 2 weeks and work and then go back home. And then she ended up moving to Denver full time with her son, who is 2.5. And it was one of the first conversations we had when she came back of saying, Cassidy, don't you have a son similar in age to mine? He really needs friends. Could we hang out? So she initiated actually hanging out with me because of our sons. And so there's just been a cool connection there of women being oh, wait, I'm new here and I can maybe be fine on my own, but I don't want that for my child. And so could we hang out so they can get together? And that's just been a really sweet relationship to develop of, like I said, we go to the park and we let them run around while we hang out. And so there's more depth for our relationship because of watching our sons play, which is really sweet.
That is really sweet.
Yeah.
What are some other creative ways, because I know you have ideas, creative ways that you could tell people, maybe someone's a mom listening and saying I can't go to the clubs, or I can go to the clubs, but how am I supposed to follow up with a woman? That tension. So what are some creative ways you'd recommend to say, here are really practical ways someone could step into another woman's life with a child?
Yeah. I think you getting comfortable with the idea of bringing your family into the situation is really sweet. That can be a really beautiful thing for a woman to actually get to see the wholeness of your life and the stability of your family, of a loving family. And so even with cities that are starting to step into serving kids more and serving the family more holistically, I think a way you can step in is asking your director, like, are there any families that would, you know, benefit from spending time with other families, and then letting the director facilitate that. I have a big vision for family dinners. That's something I really want to start soon. And so that entails, you know, meeting up at a space or at our space eventually where we can host a dinner, and it's everybody's families. So it's dancers' families, and it's our families, and it's volunteers' families. And so as your cities grow, there's going to be really cool opportunities for you to actually bring your family into the situation and let your kids be friends with their kids. I think it would be really sweet.
So, I mean, that's one place you're going in the future, but Denver's got a lot kind of on the horizon.
Totally.
So what's some like stuff going on in Denver now, and where are you headed?
Yeah. Oh, man. I feel like I've said in the last 6 months that we're on the cusp of like a lot of practical growth. And so I feel really excited about that. I think being 2.5 years in, the first 2.5 years was a lot of just like development, building trust. I'm sure you guys say this all the time, but you know, it can take 34 touch points to build trust with a woman. And so that's more than half a year. And so of Thursdays going in. And so we just in the last year seen a lot of growth with like women trusting us, wanting to spend time with us outside of the club. And so we're really moving into a really cool direction. And so we hope to have a space soon where we can really start serving these women on a weekly basis of outside of the club ministry, of Bible studies, of hangouts, of kid hangouts, all that stuff. But honestly, one of the coolest things I've seen in the last couple of months is how text outreach has been like affecting our city and our ministry. We have just been able to connect with women in person, honestly, sometimes more than what we're doing in the club outside of the industry. And so that has been really sweet. We are walking with women really, really consistently, with women that we just met from sending a text. And so that has been a really cool reality of, you know, it doesn't just have to be in the clubs on Thursday nights, which is so important and amazing. But there's so many women online, and oftentimes you're texting them in a really desperate situation. And so their response is coming out of that. And we're just getting to see women really ask for help and ask for prayer. And it's been cool to watch that shift happen of like, we get to do both of these spaces of ministry in Denver, and seeing a need in both of them has been a really cool thing that I think we're progressing towards, you know, more time with women because we're reaching more women, which is awesome.
So you send a text message. Maybe for people who don't know, tell a story to like illustrate. You send a text message. How do you end up sitting across from a woman after that?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, it can look a lot of different ways, but I feel like oftentimes a woman is responding to our initial text that says, hey, I work with a local organization dedicated to helping women. Is there any way that I can pray or support you? Oftentimes it comes with a what, or who are you, or what do you mean? But specifically with this one woman, she responded immediately and said, yes. And I was like, okay, awesome. Like, what do you need right now? And she first asked for prayer. And so I was able to like pray for her and for her family. And then she then responded with a long list of like, actually, it's just me and my 3 kids, ages 4, 3, and 2. And we need diapers, we need food, like we need all these things. Like, can you help in any small way? And so it was a very easy end of saying, yes, like we are able to bring you some of these things. And so we got on the phone and chatted with her and just said, like, where can we meet you? And so we took a bunch of bags in hands with food and diapers, and even a few like clothing items for her and for her kids. And we showed up to the coffee shop that was near her apartment. And then we heard her from her own balcony on her apartment say like, hey, Cassie, is that you? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And she ended up being like, will you come up here? And so we did. And so that doesn't happen every time. Most of the time we're meeting at a, general location, but my assistant Ashley and I felt safe and felt the Spirit leading of like, yeah, let's step into her world and into her home. And so we walked in with these bags, and her kids immediately were like all over us, like wanting us to read their books and read their stories. We got to hand them a little Jesus storybook Bible, and they wanted to sit on the floor and read it the whole time that we were there. And so that was the initial meetup of just saying like, in a moment of desperation,
yeah,
I could use help. And then us saying, we want to help you. And so our story with this woman in particular is ongoing and really, really awesome. But that is how we get to that initial part.
Yeah. And what a beautiful thing too, because I think so often women in the industry associate maybe like religion or Christians with negative behavior. And so that first encounter was kindness. And even as I'm just picturing like those kids who maybe haven't interacted with Christians before, hearing the Jesus Storybook Bible alongside such practical needs being met, like in their mind, that correlation is being built.
Yes.
Like what a really beautiful thing you get to do.
For sure. The combo and both things equal to each other is really, really sweet, of having like one and the other. And obviously Jesus being the most important thing. We know that's what's actually going to shift and change their lives. But being able to step in with these practical things and show them that we're not just like showing up to tell them about Jesus, but we also want to meet some of their physical needs, which is really beautiful.
I got to have a conversation with a woman in a club recently, and I asked her how I could pray for her, and it was like an amazing conversation for another time. I mean, it was like amazing. But one thing she said is like, you guys are different from other Christians because I don't think that you're just trying to like make me like you. You actually care about me.
Yeah.
And so affirming, right? Like not that I did anything amazing, but like that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool when that's the experience people actually receive.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's a similar story to what I had with this specific woman. I feel like I should go into a little bit more of her story because it feels important to see like what's actually capable for these women. So it started there. We started with us bringing her food and clothing, and then it developed into a really awesome relationship where we got to spend time with her and her kids on a weekly, bi-weekly basis. And so it was just like relationship building for a really long time. And then eventually turned into her saying like, I need more help. Like I want to leave this industry and I need practical steps to leave. And so we were able to introduce her to a really awesome organization in Denver that has a job placement program. And so we have seen her through, leaving the industry and walking into this organization. We actually went together 2 weeks ago for the first time to meet them. And she sat down and she immediately started crying because she was like, I can actually do something meaningful with my life. And I'm like, yes, that's what I've been telling you. You can, you're capable of this. And so she's starting this program to get her commercial driver's license. And eventually what's really cool about this organization is they put you in like their family and they help you develop while you're like working outside of the industry. They help you develop like business plans that maybe you've dreamed of and help you get them started. And so she's like, I see getting my commercial driver's license as just like the entryway into all of these things that I thought were never possible for myself. And so it's just been amazing to watch her from the first meeting into 10 meetings later, walking into the doors of an organization that's actually practically going to let her leave this industry and walk into a new one. And I had a similar conversation with her in the car afterwards where she was talking about this organization saying, I feel like they're actually ready to help me and they like want the best for me. And I had a moment where I was like, I turned to her and I just said, can I ask you something? And she said, yeah. And I was like, do you feel that way about us? Like, do you feel that we're being helpful? Because, I want to make sure that that is what you feel. And she, again, immediately started crying. And she just said, you don't even know. Like the fact that you actually take care into me and into my kids and you've continued coming back. She said that alone means that you want the best for me and that you're here for the long haul and you want to stay. And I was like, I do. I want to stay. I envision like going to your kids' graduations. Like I want to be in this for the long haul. And we just had the moment of like holding hands and crying together. And it was just beautiful to know that, this isn't the story of everyone. And this takes a long time sometimes to get here with women, but it's possible. And we can see women walk in complete 180 turns in their life and for their kids and for their families, which is really cool.
I think that's another gifting that you have. Like you mentioned, like in it for the long haul, right? 34 touch points before a woman might be willing to trust you with her story. And while this woman, it was, an immediate text, it started that trust, but it still took time.
Yes.
I think that's something you're gifted in, right? Like you've been around for a long time, 2 years in Nashville, over 2 years in Denver. So why do you think it's so important and so valuable for people to do ministry for the long haul?
Yeah. I sit down with every potential volunteer, and one of the first things I say is, are you going to be here for a while? I was like, I'm always like, this is the longest game ministry you could possibly get a part of. It takes a long time to build trust with women, to let them bring their walls down. And they often don't have any consistency or people who are around for a long time in their life. People are coming and going. And so it takes a while for them to see you coming back every week. I've heard from woman after woman after woman, like, you're still coming? And I get to say, yes, like, we're going to be here every Thursday. And so it is the longest game, that ministry that you could ever step into, because like I said, it takes time for them to say, okay, not only can I trust you, but like, I'm also going to hang out with you outside of here. Like, for what purpose, you know?
Yeah.
And so getting even to those points takes a long time. And so it's important. It takes patience. I know a story comes to mind of a woman that I met on my first night in the club in Denver. And we connected really fast. And my thought was, oh my goodness, like, am I going to walk out of here with a relationship that I've just built on my first night? Like, how cool would that be? And of course, that was not how
You're
it
like
happened.
flying high. Like, I'm so good at this job.
I was like, I'm going to come back next week and she's going to want to hang out with me. And so that was not how it went. We did connect and we did have a really good conversation. But she was not ready for that. And so week after week, I continued to talk to her. She was a songwriter, and I would ask her how that was going, ask her to read me lyrics of her songs. I continued to invest in some of the life things that she had going on. So week after week, conversation after conversation, I continued to be like, man, I really thought that this was going to, go into a relationship outside of here. Well, instead of that happening, I actually stopped seeing her after 6 months of seeing her. And so I started to ask her friends that I knew she had in the club, like, where is she? What's going on? And they said, I think she just started dancing at another club. And so I was like, okay, well, that might be the end of our journey here. And that is hard to grasp with sometimes, but that's a part of it. And I have to trust that the Lord had a purpose, and even the conversations that we had each Thursday. And so about a year later, I think it was like near Christmas, and I just had a moment of like, oh, I'm thinking about her right now. Maybe I'll send her a text and just, see what happens. I've sent her many texts over time and she never responded. And so it had been like a 6-month break of not even texting. And so I sent her a text and just said, hey, I don't know where you are or what you're doing, but I just want you to know that I'm thinking about you. And she responded immediately, and she was like, Cassidy, oh my goodness. I'm so glad you texted me. I've been searching and searching for your number. I have so much to tell you. And I was like, okay, like what? And she was like, well, for starters, and she sent me this video of her being baptized the week before. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so we met up for coffee, and she just told me her whole story of this last year that has played out. She did go to another club. She actually found herself homeless for a while, living with a woman who, eventually living with a woman who was, practicing like a lot of witchcraft and other things. And through living with her, she told me, which is just so sweet. She was like, I had a thought about a conversation that we had back in the club of like, you just saying the name Jesus. Like, I really didn't even know what that meant, but I just remembered you saying his name. And so while my roommate was engaging these things and trying to get me to engage in them, I just had a thought of like, maybe I should just look this up.
Yeah.
To just like make sure that what I'm doing, because it feels a little off. And she was like, and now I understand it was the Spirit like moving in me to say like, make sure that this is, okay. And so she looks up Jesus. And then through that literal Google search, finds a like scripture, starts reading it, goes and gets a Bible, starts reading her Bible, comes to know Jesus, is in a church, is out of the industry, has not been addicted to drugs in 2 months, and is getting baptized. Like the craziest thing
That's
in
wild.
the whole world. And for me personally, just like the coolest affirmation that God can use a 5-minute conversation to start something, and then see her be on this completely other side of her life. And so it takes patience, and it takes like consistency, because if I wouldn't have stayed for the time that I did, I might not even know where she is, number one, or like have been able to have those conversations with her week after week. And I know 6 months doesn't seem like a long time, but it played a huge role, not me, the Lord, in our conversations, played a huge role in her just even remembering that to take her from the darkest pit of her life, thinking about ending it and being in a cycle of depression and calling out to whatever was around her to walking in freedom with Jesus. And so it's important. Patience is important in this.
And it's so beautiful too, because I think those are the moments we have to hold on to. For me, even like I'm in the club and I'm like, I'm having this conversation again and she's going to be gone again. Like I may not see her again. And that can be really discouraging when week after week you're like, oh, we talk, we text, and then she disappears. Yeah. But having those moments to remember that God continues to move into work and almost holding on to those is like a promise when you feel discouraged, like, but this happened and I believe God's still working.
Yeah, for sure. I always say, but her. That's always in my head when I'm having conversations with people of feeling like I'm in a season of dryness or like, where are we going? Like, what are we doing? Does this matter? Yeah. And I'll remember, but her.
Yeah. I feel like there's so many more things we could talk about. Cassidy and I are known to talk for a very long time. Actually, when I sat down, I was like, this is not going to be an issue. Our issue's going to be keeping it short enough. So we're about to wrap up, but is there anything else that you would want to say to like encourage people who may be considering what it looks like to share hope with women, whether it's in the sex industry around them or just in hard places around them?
Yeah. Do it. You'll never regret it. Like, I think taking that first step of just what's around me, who needs to know Jesus, to be served, to have like a loving person in their life. Look at that, step back and look at that, and then just do it. Like, it takes courage to take that first step, but I promise once you do, you won't regret it. And you won't, like I said in the very beginning, I stepped into this really without a lot of knowledge of what I was going to be doing. And I walked away with a passion that I didn't even know I had. And the thought of like not being in these women's life, like to this day, like I've had many thoughts of my family might keep growing or I might keep getting busier or things might call me to need, but I can't leave this here. And there might be something out there like that for you and you don't even know it yet. And so just take the first step. Reach out to somebody in your area, a ministry or an organization. Just like take that first step and watch the Lord do his thing, because I promise it'll be good.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah. Thank you.
As we come to the end of today's episode, we hope you've been deeply inspired by the stories we shared. Our mission is to spread the hope and love of Jesus with women in the adult entertainment industry.
If you feel inspired to join the movement and make a difference, we invite you to visit our website at scarlethope.org. Follow us on social media at The Scarlet Hope for updates, or consider joining a local team in your own community.
Together, we can make a world of difference, sharing hope and bringing love to those who need it most. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to having you on our next episode.